Hey traders, Cousin Vinny coming to you on Sunday, August the 11th, 2013. This is a look at the week ahead, acknowledging the summer trade or lack thereof. You can see that futures are slightly down from the close on Friday at 1684.65. Looking at the Spider's daily chart, we can see this Kirby shelf down here above the area where we broke out in May as a possible area of support if we do manage to break down through the 30 period and get down to this lower trend line during the month of August and September. We note that stochastics is approaching oversold and that volume is fairly light. We are in a box trade setup area, so I'd be watching this going into Monday, Tuesday for a possible bounce. However, you also need to look at the sectors like XLF that's been leading the markets for the most part during July when it broke out of a descending channel the first week of July and hasn't looked back since. However, we are currently moving lower in a small channel presently. So we can see that we've pulled back and continue to consolidate here. So we touched the 30 period moving average on Thursday, and we have an inside day or harami candle on Friday. The volume was lower than the preceding day, and stochastics is pointing lower. Looking at TLT, we basically missed this about a week, I would imagine. We did get stopped out on Wednesday, Thursday of last week, or the preceding week, I should say, when we saw the stochastics oversold and we thought the possibility of a move through the 30 period was in the cards, that we would break this descending trend line and this inverted head and shoulders would play out. But we did break down, we did get stopped out of that trade, and we're since starting to move higher and tested the 30 period on Thursday. We have these Kirby levels that we need to consider. If we get up into this level here, it's a possibility that we could trade up into this vacuum that we've been anticipating over the last couple of weeks when we saw this as a trade the blood on TLT and bonds. In addition to TLT and the spiders, I've been watching a few other things, namely the VIX, which we all know is the fear indicator or a measure of the implied volatility in the S&P options for the next 30 days. I also have plotted here the S&P 500 with the vertical lines denoting areas where the VIX got down below 15. So in the last case, we were down below 15 and that marked a top, and we moved lower 7 to 8% over the subsequent few weeks. We reached a peak in the VIX and we saw a rally higher. Also note that one of the things I watch is a measure of XIV, the inverse VIX ETF versus the VXX, which is a 2-month futures contract on the S&P, and the extremes that we see from time to time. When you see an extreme like this is an area where you want to be buying, obviously, the S&P 500. And when you see an extreme high in the S&P 500 and you see this extreme with the XIV and VXX, it gives you an area to start watching for a possibility of a pull-in. So this is one of the other things that is giving me a yellow flag currently, along with TLT, the spiders, and the seasonality. This is a chart of the New York Stock Exchange Summation Index. This is the NYA, and the oscillator here is the NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange Index, and note that we have a crossover here to the downside. It's giving us a bearish signal. Note where this occurred in the past, as well as the NYMO down here below, okay, which is currently down at minus 32.20. So there's a possibility this could turn around and we could flag here and break higher, but I am anticipating that we will enter the seasonality August summer trade and see lower prices currently. Doesn't mean that's not a guarantee. It just means that's what I'm watching for currently. In addition to the previous comments, I'm also watching the number of stocks that are above the 200 period moving average on the S&P 500. Note that we're at highs and the number of stocks that are trading above their 200 period moving average are moving lower. Now if we go to another chart showing the 50 period, we have the same thing here. We see that we're continuing to move higher and the number of stocks that are trading above their 50 period moving average are declining as well and pointing lower. So that's another yellow flag for me. Here we have our sector view of many of the sectors that I'm following right now, along with the 9 spider sectors, 8 of which are down here below, along with XLY. So these are the 9 spider sectors, along with some other sectors that I'm following. In addition, I'm watching gold here. It's about to break above its 50 period moving average. So we got a cross here of the 20 period and the 50 period. So let's take a look at gold. One of the things to note here is we see this uptrend where, as you would expect, gold was moving lower, and this is a chart of the dollar up here. The dollar was moving higher and gold was moving lower. Now we had a change here in May, June, and the rest of the summer where we have this downtrend in the dollar and also a downtrend in the gold, which is unusual, but it's positively correlated in this case here. I'm watching this break of this trend line on the gold spot versus the downtrend in the dollar. Now, if the dollar reverses, I'll take another peek at this, and if this reverses down. So for the time being, I'm watching the Fibonacci levels from these highs here down to these lows. The Kirby level here that we bounced off of 2 weeks ago, and this 382 level here back at these previous highs that we put in June. Okay, we're still in a downtrend, so don't forget that, but this is something I'm watching as well as the commodities sector and materials. One of the spider defensive sectors that I'm paying particular interest in is the utility sector, which typically shows when hedge funds are either hedging their longs or if they're starting to lean towards a defensive trade. So I watched this inverted head and shoulders play out in July where we broke above and signaled that this trend was reversing. We are now flagging out right along this Kirby band, and I'm watching to see if we drop back down into this reverse Kirby or we break above this level and show another yellow flag in defense of a move lower on the S&P 500. All right, so watch the XLU, watch the XLV. The XLV is currently flagging here in a box trade situation. We've got this Kirby level down here at previous breakout levels, and we have the 30 period just below price. Stochastics is moving a little bit lower, so I'm watching this in terms of possible trades on the XLV. Looking at the SPY relative to the US dollar, commodities, the emerging markets, gold, and TLT, I first have the SPY relative to the US dollar charted here. We note that we're right along the RSI of 70 and we're at highs. So relative to the US dollar, SPY is outperforming. Let's take a look at spiders versus commodities. We can see that we had this little turn down in the last few days, and RSI is also turning down. The intermediate trend is up, after we broke this downtrend line here in December, we've continued to move higher. So it's a possibility we come down to this 50-period moving average. Note where stochastics and MACD are about to turn. When the green line is above the red line, that's bullish, and when it's below the red line, it is bearish. Obviously, you see it bearish here when the green line is below the red line on the MACD. SPY relative to emerging markets, you can see that we have been moving sideways for the most part. If you check out your yen charts and the Nikkei, you can see that there's a possibility we can continue to move higher. If we look at EWJ, we can see that we're making higher lows, and we're sitting right on the 50-period EMA. So there's a possibility we could bounce here and continue to move higher if the yen and the Bank of Japan continues to ease. SPY relative to gold, we can see also that we're moving sideways here. We're about to break down through the 50-period the 50 RSI, and MACD and stochastics are both pointing lower. So watch this for a gold trade coming into the week. SPY relative to the bonds, the TLT in particular, which is one I tend to trade. We were off on this particular trade by about a week. Note that SPY is weakening relative to the TLT, and that we have the 50-period down here below. After we broke out of this pattern here in May, we continue to move higher relative to TLT, and we all remember the downtrend or the bearish trend that we have on TLT. One sector that I'm paying particular interest to is the Dow Jones US Steel Index, noting that we broke above these levels that we saw, these highs that we saw in May, and we're right at the highs that we are just above the highs that we saw in March. So we have the highs that we put in January, February of this year ahead of us, and stochastics is moving higher. Note higher volume here, and if we look at some of the steel stocks, we could see that many of them are looking pretty good. We have US Steel here with this Kirby area here. Nothing to really shout out about, but we had 3 nice days, or 3 white soldiers in terms of candle patterns, and stochastics pointing higher on higher volume. One of my favorite stocks in this sector is Nucor Steel. So that one's looking pretty good going into the week. We broke above these highs. I would expect that we may see a little bit of a trade back into this candle and a move higher. We're above the Kirby level, and stochastics is pointing higher. We're making this move on higher volume. Also in this sector, STLD, Steel Dynamics. We're right at these highs. I would expect that this is going to break out. Look for a breakout on higher volume. That would be a good sign. AKS is moving sideways. I remember from last week looking at this chart. If you draw trend lines across here, or across these highs, we're just about trying to break out of this 360 level. We have this Kirby up above, and we can continue to move higher. We had this downtrend, we moved sideways, and now we're trying to move higher. Also note, Cliffs Natural Resources, CLF, is doing quite well in this sector, breaking above this 2369, 2359 level. Alright, we're into the Kirby now, so this one could really get moving. I wouldn't buy this now, this would be chasing, but I'd be looking for a pullback to the 10 EMA at a minimum for a trade on CLF. Let's look at ArcelorMittal, a steel group in Germany. Let's take a look here at this Kirby. We're above these highs. That was my son in the other room. So stochastics is pointing higher. Let's see if we get a higher volume day than this bar right here. When you have a higher volume day than the preceding 10 days, that's considered what's called a pocket pivot, something that was coined by William O'Neill from Investors Business Daily. So if you have a higher volume day than the previous 10 days maximum down day, which this is the maximum red day volume, you want to see a volume day that exceeds that day, and that would be considered a pocket pivot, and a possibility of continued moves higher. Now, obviously, this is considered chasing. I'd really like to see this move back down to the 10-period EMA to get into this trade. Let's also look at SCHN, Schnitzer Steel, which trades on the NASDAQ. And we can see this Kirby ceiling up here, as well as a break above these highs imminent, and a ceiling up here at 2850. So this is a little bit choppier chart, but something to keep an eye on as well going into the week. Also keep an eye on the euro. We're at previous highs here. Stochastics is overbought in the sideways range, and you have to consider the US dollar is also in a extreme range here. If you look at the stochastic, or excuse me, if you look at the Bollinger Bands, we're right at the lower Bollinger Band, and there's a very good possibility we could see a reversal back to mean on this particular issue. We also have the Fed meeting out there in the very near future. The continued talk about tapering is affecting the dollar, of course, so keep that in mind in your trades going into the week. So that's what we'll be watching, the steel sector for trades going into the week, as well as a few other things that are showing relative weakness. If we do turn over on the spiders, I'll be looking to take some shorts possibly, but for now steel is in my focus. Okay, take care. It's Cousin Vinny. I hope this helps. We'll talk to you